We know the story of the Declaration of Independence with the benefit of 200 years hindsight. It is the story of determined individuals who created a mighty nation founded upon treasured ideals. But at the time, 56 men knew only that their pursuit of liberty also meant they were committing treason and sedition against their ruler, King George III. That while confident in the righteousness of their cause, they understood they were risking all they had, including their very lives. And for every man like Benjamin Franklin or Thomas Jefferson, there are others whose lives and legacies are less well known, who waited in line for their turn to sign and had a lot of time to think about the choice they were about to make. Thomas Heyward Jr. had much to consider. He was one of the wealthiest men there. He had studied law in England, and his father was loyal to the British king. Declare independence from the mother country. I dare say that if you did such a foolhardy thing, you would likely hang for it. Did these words of warning from a concerned father still ring in his ears? Did he really believe that these fractious colonies could unite as one against a powerful king, wholly determined to retain his American colonies? The debate is over, and now it's Thomas Jr.'s turn to place his name on this document. This Declaration of America's Independence. There is no turning back now. Heyward's ancestors had lived in South Carolina for generations. His father was born there, and so was he, on July 28, 1746. His world was the family plantation in St. Luke's Parish, at the heart of which was the family home, Old House. His father, Colonel Daniel Heyward, had amassed 15,000 acres of land, and like many low-country planters, he had enslaved Africans who worked the land, growing rice which enriched the Heyward clan. Thomas Jr. was fascinated with plants and agriculture. He studied every aspect of the operations of the plantation, hoping one day to assume charge of the family business. While Daniel Heyward did hope that his son would carry on the operation of the family's plantations, first, it was more important that Thomas receive a first-rate education to study law in London. Heyward proved to be a capable student and was accepted to the English bar in 1770. But as an American from the colonies, he was looked down upon by his British peers. He instead returned to South Carolina, where he married and began to practice law in Charleston, just as tensions between colonists and the British Empire were reaching crisis levels. South Carolina was particularly divided by the growing push for independence. Those loyal to the British Crown and those who supported independence were equal in number. Daniel Heyward was reluctant to back the patriot cause. Thomas grew more determined to fight for it. His Uhaw neighborhood was one of the more patriotic-minded regions, feeding Thomas's opposition to British rule. Given his outspoken opposition to Britain, Heyward was elected to the General Assembly of South Carolina and helped draft the colony's new constitution, making South Carolina the second American colony to draft its own governing document. In 1775, Heyward was then elected as one of South Carolina's delegates to the Second Continental Congress in Philadelphia. At just 30 years of age, Thomas is one of the youngest delegates in attendance. After participating in the lively debates, Thomas voted with the others to declare independence on July 2, 1776. Declaring one's independence was a historic step, but clearly, America was going to have to fight to secure its freedom. Heyward was ready to do his part in the coming battles. Already elected as a captain of artillery in the Charlestown Battalion of Artillery, Heyward rejoined his unit after returning from Philadelphia. In December of 1778, British forces swiftly captured Savannah, Georgia, looking to build a new base of support in the South. The Revolutionary War, which had largely been fought in the North, was now on his family's doorstep. In February of 1779, Captain Heyward and the Charlestown Battalion of Artillery were hustled into position to oppose a British force that had recently landed on Port Royal Island. Under the overall command of Brigadier General William Moultrie, Heyward's artillery was positioned to bombard the nearby Redcoats. Amidst shot and shell, Heyward's 6-pounders coolly fired upon the British regulars and damaged their one cannon. Somewhere during this sharp battle, Heyward was wounded in the arm. Despite their victory at Port Royal Island, the British threat remained. And on April 29th of 1779, a large force of Redcoats under the command of Brigadier General Augustine Prevost marched from Savannah towards Charleston. Marching near Heyward's old house home, British soldiers raided the family's cornfields and threatened their property. 2 of Thomas's overseers drove off these looters, but the soldiers returned with a full company of men and regained their advantage. In April of 1780, Heyward and his artillerymen found themselves once more on the front lines, this time in front of Charleston itself. Positioned within the hornwork, the city's most formidable defensive position, Heyward's guns were vital to holding back the advancing British forces. Heyward and his 26 men were under constant fire as the British lobbed mortar shells at the American position. After being battered by the British for weeks on end, General Benjamin Lincoln, Heyward's commanding officer, surrendered to General Henry Clinton and the British Army on May 12, 1780. Heyward and 6,000 fellow American soldiers were now prisoners of war. Despite being allowed by the terms of the surrender to live in his Charleston townhouse, Heyward was dragged from his home by British Redcoats on the evening of August 27, 1780, and sent to St. Augustine, Florida. Heyward and 2 other signers of the Declaration of Independence, Arthur Middleton and Edward Rutledge, joined other prominent patriots for the uncomfortable trip south. Elizabeth Heyward kept up the fight at home, refusing a British order to illuminate her Charleston home as a sign of support for the British victory at the 1781 Battle of Guilford Courthouse. Heyward's residence was pelted with garbage and rocks by angry loyalists in town. Elizabeth continued her resolute defiance in the face of British pressure. Meanwhile, Heyward, along with several of his compatriots, reworked the lyrics of the British national anthem, God Save the King, into God Save the 13 States. The familiar tune was sung with gusto by the captive Americans. In July of 1781, Heyward and the other Americans were released and exchanged by the British. Sent to Philadelphia, Heyward nearly drowned after accidentally falling overboard on the voyage. With America now an independent nation, Heyward returned to South Carolina. He oversaw the development of his stately Whitehall home and plantation, just across the Uhaw Creek from his boyhood home at Old House. In 1786, he married Elizabeth Savage. Despite his intent to stay at Whitehall, Heyward remained active on the political scene. He was an ardent supporter of the new federal Constitution and was a member of the state convention that ratified the document in 1788. In 1791, President George Washington stayed in Thomas's Charleston home during his visit to the city, and subsequently also stayed at Thomas's Whitehall plantation during his journey to Savannah. Thomas passed away at his Whitehall home on April 17, 1809, at the age of 62. His life was one filled with selfless service and commitment to his new nation. And today, he can rightfully be seen as a true founding father of both the state of South Carolina and the United States of America. Heyward was buried in the family cemetery not far from the Old House home where he was born. Today, You can still visit his grave and the small cemetery near the creeks he used to wander along as a young man. Thanks to the efforts of the Jasper County 250th and South Carolina 250th Commissions, there are new efforts underway to better understand the Heyward's old house home and Thomas Heyward Jr.'s powerful legacy. Building off of earlier archaeological explorations conducted in 1965, a new study is underway at the old house site. Archaeologists Dan and Rita Elliott of the Lamar Institute have been exploring the old house landscape using the latest technology.
We brought some new technology to the site that included a controlled metal detector survey, looking for any evidence of a battlefield or encampments from the Revolutionary War. We also conducted a ground-penetrating radar survey, which looks for features underground. And then we also excavated 4 test units, sampling specific areas that had potential to offer more information.
The metal detector survey immediately told us that this place is crawling with metal. We looked for the concentrations, tried to map those in.
So the controlled metal detector survey that archaeologists do, and we did, maps in every single artifact and its location on the landscape. So that allows us to make incredible maps of where things are coming from, which lets us tell the story of what happened where across the site. But we were able to excavate 4 test units in areas where the ground-penetrating radar suggested there might be things, and also in areas where the metal detecting survey showed concentrations of specific artifact types. Basically, it's like uncovering a window into what's going on at the site at that particular location over time.
There's enough archaeological resources out there to keep multiple archaeologists happy for several decades digging.
It's been detected over the years, metal detected over the years, but there's still a lot of information present there underground. We're excited to have found evidence of a range of people using the site, and that includes the Heyward family and the wealthier folks. We also found evidence of African-American presence on the site. We found a distinctive kind of pottery that they're making and using.
The artifacts recovered by the metal detector survey range from around 1740, which is when the plantation really cranks up, on up until probably the latest diagnostic artifact was a Daughters of the American Revolution membership badge with a gold, platinum, and a diamond in the middle. And it was engraved with the lady's name on the back, and we were able to research her and learn that she probably dropped it around 1976, probably around the bicentennial celebration at Thomas Heyward's grave. That's our working theory right now.
Dan and I were really excited to work with a lot of students from the area, from different schools and groups. And they're always a lot of fun because when they come out, they don't have a whole lot of information about archaeology or knowledge about archaeology. So we were able to incorporate the archaeological site into a round robin where they could actually do some hands-on things, touch artifacts from 200-something years ago, and think about the past in a different way than they could looking at textbooks in their classroom. So now we're in our archaeology lab, middle ground lab here, and wanted to show you some of the more interesting things we found on the site. Here's an example of some of the ceramics in one of the levels of one of our test units. So what's interesting to me about this is we've got a couple of different kinds of ceramics. We've got this wonderful yellow trailed slipware, got some great Delftware from the 1740s, 1750s. And as you notice, they're fancy. This would have been on the dinner table of the Heywards. Right next to it, we have pottery that isn't fancy. There's no glaze on it. It's just real utilitarian pottery. We know this is colonial-ware pottery, and colonial-ware is a specific kind of pottery made and used by African Americans. And it also says these are the people doing the work. They're the people cooking the food, serving the Heywards in these fancy dishes that go on the table. So it's a nice juxtaposition that's just shown here on these kinds of ceramics that we've excavated.
This is a silver spoon. It's broken and been ground off on the end here, so it can still be used as a spoon. We find these on Civil War sites quite frequently where the soldiers are trying to travel light and not carry a whole lot of stuff in their knapsacks, and they'll take a spoon and whack off the end of it and use it as an eating utensil. So that's my theory. A soldier left it here. Gives us some great information on the back. There's a maker's mark. So thanks to Google, we found this in the field, and within minutes, maybe a minute, Rita discovered that this spoon was made from 1852 to 1855. So it's miraculously, datable to within a 3-year span or so.
So another interesting artifact we found at the Old House Plantation was this kevel. This is pointing out to the maritime component of the site. And this kevel would have been either mounted on a vessel or mounted on a dock. And we're getting in the area where there was a ramp going into the marsh, had docks and a lot of maritime activity. So this would have been mounted, say this is the piece of wood of the dock, like this, and the bolts would have gone through the wood. You can still see a bolt right here. And then when you go to moor your vessel, you would get the rope and wrap it around in a figure 8. So this would help tie your boat to the dock so it wouldn't go away. And we know that based on the size of this, it likely would have held a vessel of 30 to 40 feet long. So this would probably be, a vessel being used to unload and load up different goods and being shipped by the Heywards, like rice and things like that.
Another interesting artifact that we found is this small silver coin. It's got King Charles on the front, and the date 1773. And on the back, it's got a coat of arms. And the back tells us that it's made in Mexico City. And this was legal tender in the United States until the 1850s. So it doesn't mean that there were Spanish people there. This has got a hole through it, you can see. It's probably worn around the neck or other part of the human body as a little talisman or good luck charm. So it's legal tender, it's silver.
This is an interesting artifact, interesting in a different way from all of our other interesting artifacts. But this is a padlock, and it's almost complete. So it's iron, wrought iron, made by a blacksmith, a locksmith, and then it's got a brass escutcheon around here. And it's in pretty good shape. The cool thing about padlocks are they're diagnostic. So by the shape, we can pretty much date this to probably about late 18th, early 19th century. But also what it tells us is they're locking something up, right? So there's something valuable here, whether it's a chest full of sugar or silver. So it shows, again, it points to the Heywards' status that they have valuables worthy of locking up. We hope you've enjoyed this look at some of the artifacts that we found at Old House Plantation. Of course, there are a lot more than what we've showed you, but if you would like to learn more about it, we encourage you to go to the Jasper250.com website, where that information will be put up when we have the report ready for you. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for watching and listening, and we look forward to having you come visit. Keep up with us on our website at Jasper250.com. We'll continue to add and build as we do things at the site. A lot to be done here. We thank the State Commission for their grant money, and as well as our 3 governments here in Jasper County, originally in the town of Hardyville, who've helped us continue to find funding to build this site. There'll be subsequent phases, lots of details. So we look forward to you coming back, keeping up with us, and stopping by and seeing us.